Stay away. It's mine. Hey guys, Jeremy here from School of Wok. We're in our new kitchen. It's Wok Wednesday, and this week it definitely is a Wok Wednesday. We are doing Singapore chili crab. So I've got my wok clock of ingredients here. So we've got some onion, some finely chopped ginger and garlic, some spring onion for the base as well, and loads of chili. I've used large red chilies and just chopped that up. The first thing I'm going to do is start to make the sauce so that can kind of bubble away, and then we're going to deal with the crab. The sauce itself, we're going to make up with all these little ingredients here. We want it to be nice and red. So I've got some tomato paste for that, but I don't want it to be too tomatoey in flavour. So you could use fresh tomatoes as well if you wish, but it's a nice quick and easy way to make up your sauce. Sweet chilli, about 2 to 3 tablespoons of sweet chilli sauce. Some palm sugar. You can use normal sort of brown sugar for this as well. A couple of tablespoons of palm sugar. That'll give it a nice sort of treacly flavour. And then the more liquidy ingredients are going to come in here. I've got some Shaoxing rice wine. So 3 to 4 tablespoons of rice wine. Start to melt that through. Just push into that palm sugar. You could add all these sort of individually into the wok, but this just makes it nice and simple. Now at the moment, that sauce will taste quite sort of sweet because of that palm sugar and the sweet chili. So we're going to balance that sweetness out with salty and savoury. So I've got about a teaspoon of shrimp paste in here. And again, like the palm sugar, you want to push into that so it actually sort of mixes in well, because no one wants a clump of shrimp paste in anything, really. That's well mixed. I'm going to balance the sweetness out with a little bit of rice vinegar as well. So I've got about 2 tablespoons of rice vinegar. And then sea salt we'll put in later on. So next up, you want to kind of stew your based ingredients and get them to sort of bring out all of that sort of natural sweetness from the onions and ginger and garlic. So I'm going to get it to a high heat to start, but then I'll turn it down to sort of medium and start to cook these base ingredients off. Just a little reminder, guys, our gas burner isn't quite ready to use yet, so it doesn't really matter whether you're in gas or induction. As long as you understand your heat, it'll work. But once it's working, we'll get that fire going in a few weeks' time. So just stir fry your onions, quite high heat right now, so I'm going to bring that down because I do want this to kind of stew, and you want the onions to soften nicely and start to brown over time. So after sort of 4 or 5 minutes, your onion should soften nicely, start to brown lightly. You're going to start to add your rest of your ingredients. So your ginger, garlic, get that into there, mix that around a bit. Give it about a minute before you add your spring onion and your chili. So this is very much a sort of slow stir fry. You want to sort of cook off all your onions and get all that flavour into the base of the pan. I don't mind a little bit sticking either, because we're going to lift that off with the sauce later on. So your spring onion and your chili for that flavour and colour. Fold that in. Large chilies are good for this. You don't want it too over spicy. It's more about the sweetness of that chili and the real flavour from the chili that I'm going for. I quite like these base ingredients relatively sort of chunky. If you want a smoother sauce, then just finely chop them. And we're going to stew that down and sort of bring out the sweetness, or as much of that sweetness from the chili as possible. I've got a little bit of this sticking at the bottom. I've kept it moving, and now I want your wok on a nice high heat. I'm going to lift that off the base of the wok. Sauce in. give that a nice scrape through. Get all that flavour off the bottom and really sort of deglaze that wok. You can see that colour there and that sort of caramelisation coming from the sweet chilli. That caramelisation coming from the sweet chilli sauce and that palm sugar. Just turning the heat down to medium-high heat now. Let that bubble away. I do want this to caramelise a bit before I add any more liquid, so I'm going to add some water to this, or stock, whatever you want really. What you will notice is that rice vinegar hits the wok and immediately goes up your nose. So you're sort of cooking out the sourness of that rice vinegar, and that sweet sour flavour is going to really give some flavour to this chili crab. So you've got this nice stewed onion, chilli and sweet chilli broth. Caramelised nicely, so I'm going to pour some water over the top. And then we'll reduce that down over the next sort of 15-20 minutes before we then add our crab. So you want to bring this to a vigorous boil, and at this point we're going to season it a little bit with some sea salt. Because as I said, there's quite a lot of sort of sweet stuff in there. You'll get some saltiness come off the crab when it goes in as well. So just a couple of pinches of sea salt. Let that boil away. Once it's vigorously boiling, then bring it down to a simmer. Cover it with a lid. Let it cook. Now, the Chinese way of dealing with a crab is definitely a lot quicker, less mean to the crab itself than, say, boiling it. Because boiling it is always said that boiling something live is never very nice. So you've got to be quite quick with this and be careful, especially if it is a live crab. The live is also very, very good for freshness. So it will taste really fresh if you do it this way. You've got to be quick and certain and know what you're doing. First thing you're going to do is hold the claw and the legs with your left hand, and then the tail is going to come off. You're going to go straight in with something blunt. So a blunt knife is good for this, and it's going to go straight in. Okay? This kills the crab. Now, after that, you can take your time. Any movement from here is absolutely just the muscles contracting and reacting. Next thing I'm going to do is remove its claws, and that just makes it easier to then take the whole crab apart. So claws out, and then to remove the head, you take your fingertips over the shell and you just push upwards with your thumbs. And that should bring the legs off the shell. Now, looking at the inside of your crab, this is where your crab brown meat is. So if you've always bought sort of picked crab, you'll have your white and your brown meat. Your brown meat is inside the head. That's where all the flavour is. And then you've got your sort of more meaty parts, which comes from the legs and the claws. These bits here, they are called dead man's fingers. So they're said to be poisonous. I don't think they actually are, but they definitely don't taste or feel nice in texture to eat. So you want to take those bits off. So at this point, we're just going to start to chop into your crab, just to make it easier to eat. Everything from here needs to be cleaned well. Sometimes you can use a sponge or even an old toothbrush, give it a really good scrub. And then we're going to crack the shell so it's nice and easy to get into. So you can see here, I've scrubbed this clean. I actually just used a sponge. So everything's nice and clean now. The head, that's just as is. The claws are probably the toughest bit to get into. So you do want to sort of break them apart if you can. So straight through. You can see here, I'm kind of lifting up with my knife so I don't have to aim too much. And then what we do is use the sort of surface area of my cleaver to crack it open, and that makes it easier to pick apart. The legs again, you can just lightly crack these with the base of your cleaver or the side. And just a light tap so that the meat's easy to pick out. Chinese tradition, we don't like to waste anything, so we really have used the whole crab here. It's not there just to pick out the meat here, so you can eat every part. So my crab is ready to go. The sauce has been going for a good 15-20 minutes. I'm going to start to season it up. A little light soy sauce, salt, and actually I'm going to thicken it slightly with some corn flour paste. Light soy sauce will give it a nice sort of salty, savoury flavour. So a good jig of that. I'm going to try that before I add any salt. Well, yeah, we get, whoa, that's got a hit. Good amount of chilli in there. And salt will just accentuate that savoury. Your corn flour paste, I've got about a tablespoon of corn flour in there, and I'm going to go for about 2 to 3 times the amount of water. Give that a little stir. I don't want my sauce to be too thick, because I still want the crab to bubble away nicely into it, and I don't want it to be too gloopy. The egg, which I'm going to beat into it as well, will thicken the sauce at the very last minute. So just go for half that first. Give that a stir around. It's already thickened that up a little. And the last bit of flavour that's going to go into this is the actual crab. The shell has loads of natural savoury flavour. Now you could, if you're in a restaurant, cover this crab in corn flour, deep fry it, and then put it into your sauce. But actually I find the sort of natural texture of the crab as it is, if that sauce is thick enough, cooks nicely. So I've popped this onto a high heat now. I'm going to get my head into there, get that sauce bubbling away, my claws in. Everything sort of really soaked into the sauce nicely. Just want to dish that out. Now, I'm just covering it in the sauce first. And then I'm going to cover that with a lid and steam that. I'm just going to turn the heat down slightly so it doesn't burn. I'm going to steam that for about 4 to 5 minutes, no more. So the last thing we're going to do is just beat some egg, and this sort of wisps into the sauce, much like making an egg drop soup, which has been a really popular recipe, or sweet corn soup here in the UK. So give that a good beat. I'm going to wisp that in after we've dished out the crab. So at this point, the crab's been cooking for that 4 or 5 minutes. That's definitely cooked through now. Everything's gone that sort of corally pink in colour. We'll start to serve this up. The claw, my favourite part. It does take a couple of seconds longer than the leg, just because it's slightly thicker. Now, you want to switch that sauce off because it's a good thickness. You can see that. It's got a nice sort of dripping consistency. And at this point when it's switched off, then we're going to sort of carefully stir this egg into that hot chili sauce. And that will wisp through nicely. You can see the wisps just happening there as I run my chopsticks through. I've also got some homemade chili oil. That adds a bit of colour to the sauce. And we're going to just pour this over the top of your crab. Whoa, look at that. Spring onion or coriander over the top. And then because I've got it, I'm going to serve this with that deep fried mantou, the steamed bao dough that actually I've made for another recipe. My actual mantou, which is this stuff here, is going to pop straight into the oil. Go careful with this because it does brown quite quickly. That I've made sort of this crazy sort of brain-shaped bao. See how that works. turn that over straight away. And you can see how quick that mantou crisps up and goes golden brown. So the mantou is done. We'll call this the brain bow. This is just a bit of fun really, but this is great for dipping into that chili crab sauce. Beautiful, crispy, steamed buns on the side there. Singapore chili crab. I can't wait to tuck in. So I'm trying to figure out how I can eat this in a civilized way in front of camera. I don't think there is actually a way, so I'm going to try this is what I believe to be the simplest piece. First off, that sauce is amazing. Now you see how hard my teeth are. And look at that meat. Should just be able to sort of pick out nicely. And then of course, the deep fried mantou with that dipping sort of noodle inside. Best just to sort of mop it up. In Singapore, they actually give you bibs in the restaurant to eat this stuff. You're still watching me. Get on and cook it. Guys, if you like this recipe as much as I do, and you want to learn more, don't forget to subscribe to our channel.